Okay, so this is going to be my second attempt at making a video. First one, I guess, went okay, but I felt like the audio wasn't that great. I'm hoping the audio will be better this time. We'll see. I have a different setup, and hopefully this one works out better. And if not, I'll figure something else out. We'll go back to the other one if we have to. But, you know, in the middle of a pandemic, it's hard to get good studio equipment. Alright, so, you modern history folks, we left off talking about Hitler's life, his rise to power. That's where we're going to pick this back up. Alright, so, where were we? Okay, so where we left off, he had been sentenced to 5 years in prison for trying to overthrow the government and declaring himself the new leader of Germany when he stormed the beer hall, or the beer hall putsch. It didn't go as planned, however, the trial was public, he gave a lot of speeches, and it made him a household name. So this is where we left off. Now, actually it's a little warmer tonight than it was last time I filmed. Last time I filmed it was kind of cold. But, alright. So, in prison, he wrote a book. I think you all know which one. I meant to bring my copy with me and I forgot it. It's in the house. Meh. Anyway. Alright. The book he wrote was Mein Kampf, which is My Struggle. Alright, so he wrote this in prison. He would from what I understand, he would dictate it and pace back and forth in the jail cell, and his little cellmate jotted the whole thing down. Or at least, from what I understand, that's how it happened. It's the combination of an autobiography and his political ideas, all kind of mixed in together. Now, his autobiography is not entirely accurate from what I understand. It's more of an idealized version of himself that he wanted to present to the public. So if you ever read it, which I actually encourage you to do, it's not the most fascinating read, but it's worth reading. You need to know what's in it. Don't take it as too factual. Most of it probably is, but he twists the truth to suit his needs at the time. And it was absolutely full of propaganda, and he talked about propaganda, and he talked about how to manipulate the public. And something I find to be really interesting is that he straight up wrote in his book how to manipulate the public, that he was going to manipulate the public, and what his goals were. Then, he made sure every German got a copy of this book. Just no one bothered to read it because I assume people just don't like to read. And the book's like this thick, and it's not a fascinating read, so I can't really blame the Germans for not reading the thing, but they should have. So anyway, he writes about how to manipulate, I can't talk. Anyway, how to mess with the public's head. Why Germany should rule the world, and how the Jew is inferior and evil. So this is all in the book, and again, it's worth giving a read. I've had a few students in the past say they were going to read it. I've had a few check it out at the library. I have never had one finish it. It's not one that will keep you on the edge of your seat. But if you want to know what's in it, I have a few highlights from the thing. And before filming this, I should have picked out the best ones. I did not. Okay, so here's something he wrote in the book. There must be no majority decisions, but only responsible persons. Surely every man will have advisors by his side, but the decision will be made by one man. Obviously, he meant for himself to be that one man. Winston, quit. Sorry, my dog was chewing on the power cord. So, There can be no majority decision. He's talking about democracy. He was not in favor of democracy. He was a socialist in favor of a socialist dictatorship. The difference between him and the communist is that communist wanted worldwide communism. He wanted national. He was a national socialist. He wanted it within his borders in Germany. It's one of the biggest differences. Also, in fascism, you can still have private property, but government has a very heavy interference in that. And then communism, the private property is basically abolished. And that's the biggest difference. Alright, so there's that. What else do we have here? Oh, this is actually maybe the most famous line in the whole book. The great masses of the people will more easily fall victim to a big lie than to a small one. So this goes to the propaganda. This is something you need to be aware of. Dog. How's that? Okay, good enough. Alright, so anyway, most famous line. Move this back over here. Alright, the great masses of the people will more easily fall victim to a big lie than to a small one. Alright, I gotta get rid of the dog. Quit! So the idea here, and he's moved my camera again. Would you stop? Okay. What? Alright. Okay, so, anyway, back to this. You're making it just terrible to concentrate. Alright, so the idea here is if you tell a small lie, you won't get away with it. People will nitpick it, and you'll be proven a liar. You won't get away with it. So Hitler's idea, which is largely true, is if you tell a gigantic, how big's the frame? Gigantic lie, it's easier to get away with because it's so big, no one would lie about it. And you get away with it. So a bigger lie is easier. Trying to think of an example of a big lie and a small lie, but I have a dog distracting me. Alright, you think of a big lie and a small lie at home. Oh, here we go. Here's another little famous line of his. The personification of the devil as the symbol of all evil assumes the living shape of the Jew. The Germans probably should have read this book. They didn't. Alright, Hitler was not actually religious, but he would mix religion in when it suited him. He actually wished, from what I understand anyway, that his country had been Islamic because he thought he could get them to go on a jihad. But he was stuck with Christianity, so he took Christianity and he would warp it for his needs. Such as, I believe that I am acting in accordance with the will of the Almighty Creator. By defending myself against the Jew, I am fighting for the work of the Lord. You probably won't hear that in a sermon at church, but anyway, that was one of Hitler's quotes there. Alright, here's another where he's taking the Bible a little bit out of context, but I don't necessarily think he's wrong. This might be one where he's right. Sooner will a camel pass through a needle's eye than a great man be discovered by an election. He's misquoting Jesus on that one, but he still makes a pretty good point. Not endorsing the guy, just saying he got one right. Alright, let's end on this one. Their sword will become our plow, and from the tears of war, the daily bread of future generations will grow. So, again, they should have read this book. It was available. Actually, once he becomes dictator, he gave a free copy to everybody. If you got married, you got a free copy. Just no one read it because it was a really big book. No one wanted to read the thing. And it wasn't a fun read. It's not terribly well written, but it is insightful, and they should have read it. Now, the next thing that we will do is the actual Nazi rise to power. We're going to have him actual seize power. So this is the book he wrote in prison. A few highlights from. The next thing we'll talk about is how he actually rises to power, gets into government, and then seizes government and becomes a dictator. And this is stuff you need to know because this stuff happens all the time. In fact, just a few days ago in Hungary, they gave their leader emergency powers with no time limit. He's essentially dictator now. We'll see how that goes for Hungary. He may give up the powers as soon as this little crisis is over, and he might not. So we'll find out. So alright, we'll do more Hitler here in a few days. And the stuff coming up is pretty good. You'll like the stuff coming up. And some of the stuff we're going to talk about will be very merry, or what's another word for merry? Joyful? No. Gay. That's the word we're looking for. So, alright. I will see you guys in a few days.